We're supposed to go out. Okay. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Because I actually, we need more. Hello. Is that any better? Any better? Yeah. Well, the guys say the mic should be here. Okay. Okay. Is that any better or? Okay. That's not supposed to happen.
Hello. That works.
Yes. Okay. Anyways, welcome to the Wikileaks talk. We're very glad to see that so many people have come for this keynote. I'd like to maybe pick up where Cohn left off in the first talk, thanking everyone who has built up this great place for the next couple of days. We all hope you enjoy yourselves. My name is Daniel. I'm with Wikileaks in Germany. This is Julian, whom you might know from writing for Wikileaks as well. He also published a couple of books, one of them quite popular in this scene. Julian will give you an introduction to Wikileaks, and after that we'll be talking about some current developments. So enjoy your talk, and Julian will take over now.
Okay, can everyone hear me down the back? Yeah? Okay. Now, what about my accent? Okay. Humanity has had a long history of tyranny. Wherever there are riches to be had or land to be grabbed, there are tyrants and tyrannical institutions. Humanity has had an equally long history of rebelling against these same tyrannies and exposing their injustices. I have seen the degradation of politics and war firsthand. But I still believe in the ability of people to rebel against tyranny and injustice. Without this belief, I wouldn't be standing here before you today at HAR 2009. From the Spartacus slave uprisings of Rome to the serf rebellions under Tsarist Russia to the activists of the 1968 Prague Spring, people have stood together en masse against tyranny. Individuals often act as catalysts for this rejection of tyranny. 19th century American writer Henry David Thoreau popularized the term civil disobedience when he opposed an unjust war. He was a 19th century geek. He obsessed in his work alone. He built a house in forests much like these, to be alone. He was an outsider, and it was this perspective that let him say what others could not. There are other catalysts for civil disobedience, many famous, such as Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Some of these catalysts, such as Nelson Mandela, won their wars. Others, such as the brave Aung San Suu Kyi, continue to serve as successful points of opposition in battles that have yet to be won. What is unique in our moment of history is the convergence of the very old notion of civil disobedience and a newly globalized world in which less than 200 milliseconds separates everyone from New York to Nairobi. And that fact has led to a new phenomenon: global digital disobedience, where people of the world can come together to support each other in their mutual struggles. Digital disobedience uses technology to catalyze positive social change. It uses technology to call corrupt institutions and individuals to account, no matter in what country they're in. It enhances the power of nonviolent protest, and it is not just a theory. We have shown it works. What is special about this gathering here in the Netherlands, held once every 4 years, is that it is a showcase for the evolving nature of digital disobedience. From its earliest days, this event has shown how technology can be a tool for reform. At HIP in 1997, this community learned how the German government tried to shut down a small nuclear protest magazine because it didn't like what the magazine said. Geeks and activists including many of the original founders of this gathering, joined together to ensure freedom of speech by hosting the magazine, including at the great Dutch ISP Access for All. The German government effectively blocked Access for All behind the scenes. It was access for all but the people of Germany. If the German government's move was heavy-handed and clunky, this community's response was light and agile. Geek set up mirroring on a scale that had rarely been done before, and the German authorities backed down. That was an important early point on the timeline of digital disobedience. Wikileaks is another such point. Started in 2007, Wikileaks is the world's first uncensored, secure, and anonymous whistleblowing site. Civil disobedience can have a high human cost. After the Spartacus uprisings 2,000 years ago, Rome crucified more than 4,000 slaves. Their bodies still line the famous Appian Way, which was Rome's first superhighway. At Wikileaks, we use technology to try and reduce the human cost of civil disobedience and promote justice. We don't want bodies to line our new global highway. And now I will give you some examples of information that we have helped to put into the public sphere that otherwise would not. And later, my colleague Daniel will give you a list of information that should be in the public sphere but still is not. Okay, so my first example, actually I'll list, Daniel, can you, no, it's okay.
You can just push space, yeah.
Okay, so it's important to say what WikiLeaks is and what it is not. So it is a platform, but it is part of a larger project, which is by Sunshine Press. And this is our particular realization of the concept of getting out documents that generate political reform to a world stage. So it uses technology, but it is not a specific technology. We use lawyers, but we are not just a legal organization like the ACLU. And we also use political strategies, but we are also not a political party. Although sometimes I think people may have images. So, who of you here is familiar with Guantanamo Bay? I hope it's all from the outside. We received the main manuals for Guantanamo Bay. And that's the standard operating procedure. And we received that in late 2007. At the time, you may remember that the political line being pushed by the United States was that Guantanamo Bay was, in fact, a model prison. But through our work, and of course other people's, we showed that this was not true. So we received the 2003 manual to Guantanamo Bay. The ACLU had been trying for 5 years at that stage to get the manual under the Freedom of Information Act, and had been denied all that time. The 2003 manual revealed that prisoners were being held secretly from the Red Cross, which is a violation of international law, that they underwent numerous psychological abuses and also some physical abuses in great detail. That release to the public then, of course, generated a lot of media interest and press coverage and responses by the commanders of Guantanamo Bay. In their response, and in the US Defense Department's response, it was stated that that was then, that a new commander had taken over and the prison had been reformed. That lie invigorated another whistleblower to step forward and give us the next year's manual, 2004. And by comparing these two, we were able to show that, in fact, the situation for prisoners in Guantanamo had degraded over time, that it hadn't gotten worse, and that a new camp had been set up, Camp 4, which was a media show camp. So it hadn't gotten better, rather the perception had changed because of propaganda. Now, this is something we've often seen, that one leak will inspire other people. Daniel Ellsberg, the famous American whistleblower who leaked the Pentagon Papers and whose most recent article is on the front page of Wikileaks, has often said that courage is contagious, that one courageous act well done inspires other people to follow suit. And so we often see this, great streams of leaks from a particular country or a particular institution following others.
Excuse me, sir, could you speak up?
You guys in the back all lied, right? Okay, can you hear me now? What about now? Can anyone not hear me? Please put your hand up. Okay, so it's not just the American military, although there's certainly well, actually, this is about the American military as well, so all right. Although there's certainly a large amount of stuff, but it's not just about America or Cuba. Right here, earlier this year, in the Netherlands, this is the front page of NRC Hansel-Blad. Is my pronunciation correct?
No.
Hansel-Blad. A great Dutch newspaper, I hear. So we upstage what looks to be like Hillary Clinton's visit to the Netherlands. So we obtained from a source an encrypted PDF from the RAND Corporation. Now, some of you may remember that the RAND Corporation is a US Defense Department think tank. And in fact, it's where Daniel Ellsberg worked before he leaked the Pentagon Papers from the RAND Corporation. This was an intelligent assessment, 200 pages, of what had been happening in Iraq and Afghanistan. It interviewed over 100 intelligence agents in NATO, and a number of the most candid of those worked for the Dutch military. So they exposed that Dutch soldiers had been morally corrupted by their experience in Afghanistan, which of course should come as no surprise because war always corrupts its participants. It also exposed the relationship between the Netherlands and the United States was not that of equals in NATO. The Netherlands Air Force had been instructed to go on bombing runs in Afghanistan. And after it had dropped its bombs, it wanted to know, had it hit its targets, were there civilian casualties? And of course, as far as I know, the Dutch government doesn't have its own spy satellites circling Afghanistan. So it asked for the satellite images from the United States of the regions that it had bombed on behalf of the United States to see if there were civilian casualties. And the United States said, no, that's classified information. You can buy our planes and drop bombs for us in Afghanistan, but in fact you can't have access to the satellite photos that show where your bombs dropped. So I just mentioned, I can't go into detail for this case, but we don't just do documents. So here's one from Peru. These little countries can give great examples of what happens when whistleblowing really gets going in a country. So this is 86 telephone intercepts of Peruvian politicians. And this man on the left, a journalist, had some real problems with his stuff. So we worked together to get this out simultaneously on WikiLeaks, and then he could write about it in the Peruvian papers. So you see this is the front page of every paper in Peru, which dramatically changed the political climate, at least for a few months in Peru. And we've had a number of other audio leaks as well. This is about a famous case, the Bank Julius Baer case, which is ongoing, still information being revealed as from The Guardian. Okay, so I personally, having lived in Kenya on and off over the past few years, have seen some fairly dramatic impacts. I have also seen a number of assassinations and exposed assassinations together with our sources on Wikileaks. And this is an example which is a great bit of information, but I can't go into too much detail. So this is from East Timor, which was recently liberated. That's our newest democracy, actually, recently liberated from the Indonesian regime. And there's a famous rebel commander there who was assassinated. And we were given this telephone SMS intelligence map. So what you can see are all these people involved in the lead up to the assassination, who called whom, and what the order was. You guys should know that the NSA has these as well. So every telephone call that transitions to the United States can generate one of these. In this case, it's something that was quite good and helped work out who was involved in that assassination.
You have to speak up. Just speak up, just speak louder, please.
Okay. Wow. The power of the thing. Okay, so in Kenya in December 2007, I was present, and we were involved in getting hold of a report that revealed that the president, Daniel Arap Moi, had stolen $4 billion from the Kenyan treasury over time. And this is a country where the average person makes $1 a day. So $4 billion is a real dent in the economy. Hello. The context of that report is interesting because it shows you that regular civil society and civil government institutions are not enough once people get into power. So President Kibaki the president of Kenya at that time in 2007, got into power on an anti-corruption ticket, that he would clean out all the corruption that had happened under Moi and his cronies. He commissioned a private intelligence firm in the UK called Kroll Associates to track down where the money went. That firm produced a report and gave it to the Kibaki government. The Kibaki government then sat on the report and instead used it for political leverage. And just before the Kenyan election, Kibaki went into coalition with Moi, headed up to the election. And everyone thought this means these guys are definitely going to win, the two major power groupings. And 3 days later, we released that intelligence report. And it was front page of The Guardian for 20 nights running on Kenyan TV. That issue, there was nothing else but that issue. And the result was a 10% swing in the vote. We know that from another intelligence report from the Kenyan intelligence. And Kibaki lost the election. As a result of losing the election, there were major constitutional reforms in Kenya. Another thing that we've received information from in Kenya is a whole lot of extrajudicial assassinations. So if you think about what the United States has been doing with its special forces, Dick Cheney's assassination squad, going out and assassinating people suspected of being members of Al-Qaeda. Well, Kenya took note of that and in fact assassinated over 1,000 people that it didn't like, with government approval, outside the court system. And some other Kenyan journalists and the human rights investigators at the Kenyan Human Rights Commission released an investigation, or tried to release an investigation, were not able to politically. We then released the investigation to the world, and as a result of that, the UN intervened, a special reporter was assigned, and there's been ongoing investigations. Two of the sources, the public sources to that report, two friends of mine, and this shows you something very important, that when you're public and you're in the wrong country, bad things can happen. So these two people, two human rights lawyers who were the founder of the Oscar Foundation and his colleague, were assassinated. Were assassinated in broad daylight on their way to a meeting at the Kenyan Human Rights Commission. So we've had a lot of, we get sued about once per month, and we get illegal letters about once every 2 weeks. We get sued about once per month and get legal letters about once every 2 weeks. And it's interesting to see where these sources come from. They're from banking institutions, they're from the military, and sometimes media and government, but really the banking institutions have an unusual attitude towards us. So there's a famous case last year that we dealt with. This is Bank Julius Baer. And it's a Swiss bank. We revealed their money laundering operations and asset hiding operations in the Cayman Islands. And they went after us in California. And some of you may remember this case. We briefly lost our .org registration for approximately 1 week. We built a legal coalition that was able to defeat that. And so this has continued with similar investment bank cases in South Africa, in just last week in the United Arab Emirates, and something you may have seen recently, which is Corpthing. So an Icelandic, the largest bank in Iceland. 2 weeks ago, we leaked its loan book, all loans over 45 million euro. And the result of leaking this loan book was, of course, an immediate attack by the Corpthing Bank on us, which we easily resisted. But it then took the most unusual step of injuncting all the media in Iceland from reporting that we had released the loan book. And inside the loan book, it reveals that the principals of Corpthing and billionaires in the UK had been, in fact, loaning themselves billions and billions of dollars without collateral. And they had been loaning people who had shares in Corpthing money based upon the shares in Corpthing. So a bit of a pyramid scheme to pump up the share price and to do favours for friends in Corpthing. As a result, there was public outrage by the censoring in relation to the censoring of the national broadcaster in Iceland. And it's interesting to see these island cases because everyone in the community can come together. And when it's an island, you can see what is causing the effect. So this has been in all the major newspapers around the world over the past week. The Icelandic president has come out and said that they're going to change banking secrecy laws in Iceland to make it easier for people to reveal the behaviour of these investment banks. And even the UK Serious Fraud Office has called for more people to come forward, more Corpthing whistleblowers to come forward and reveal banking documents. So there's actually a world of information as far as these banks are concerned. So people say that the other two banks in Iceland, Glitnir is one and the other is absolutely unpronounceable, actually John Cleese has a segment on how to pronounce Corpthing. That's also unpronounceable. These are even worse cases. We've seen other cases in Turks and Caicos Islands and East Timor I mentioned before. And I believe that these island cases show that if we can increase the amount of whistleblowing and document leaking that's happening in major countries, we will see the same effect as we do in these island countries and smaller communities, which are totally transformed by the revelation of information, serious information. And once again, this has inspired other people. So we've now received a whole lot more information about Corpthing, including SMS messages going back several months between the CEO of Corpthing and a former government minister in Iceland, which will release soon, revealing that they had fabricated documents inside Corpthing. Okay, so now that's an example of some of the material that we have successfully released and that has gone on to successfully produce reform. There's many, many other examples. In fact, thousands of other examples that we have done and that I have also been involved in. So some of you may be familiar with our censorship work and the many censorship lists that we've released from China, from Baidu, which is China's equivalent of Google, from Thailand, from Norway, from Australia, a very famous case, from Denmark. But we don't have time to go into that now, but on Friday at 11 p.m. We'll be doing a session just on some of these censorship cases, and Daniel will speak a little bit more about that later on.
Well, that's not yours.
Okay.
It's my section, I guess.
Okay.
Shall I take over? Or? Okay.
So that is an example of when it goes well, the amount of impact that can be had just by revealing information which is suppressed. The value of why go after the suppressed information, the constricted information? Well, it's because in the universe of information, it's hard to know what matters, what is actually going to produce some reform. You need a way of measuring the value, some signal, some economic signal. And the economic signal that is given to us is how hard do people try to suppress it. Because what we've seen is that they have an understanding of their own information, their internal information. And the degree of effort to which they go to suppress that information represents a signal about the potential reform effect of that information. So that is how we are able to pick the pieces of information, the pieces of knowledge that are hidden in the world, which will have the greatest reform effect for civilization. And now we will present some stuff that we don't have, and that journalists that I've spoken to want, and human rights lawyers and internet activists have nominated. We first decided to do this when a year ago a Dutch IT consultant came to me and said, well, it's great what you're doing, and it's amazing that you've had such incredible political impact, but I am a technical person. I don't understand what it is that's going to make this impact, what the zeitgeist is in the media at that moment. How can I contribute the right thing to this? I have a lot of access as an IT consultant. I'm an insider in many organizations. But how do I know what to give you? Do you have a list? And we didn't have a list. But I thought it was actually a really good idea that we did have a list. So now we have a list. Not perfect, but pretty good. And Daniel is going to tell you about this list.
Okay. So, as Julian said before, we thought it is important to understand. I mean, we're getting a lot of information about the problems that exist in our world, and we started it would be good to get a sample of what are the documents that all these organizations out there want to defend freedom of speech, to defend human rights, and all these interests that we have for the common good of the world. So we put out a call asking for the most wanted documents of these organizations in the world. So what we can see from the list we have compiled is, for one, we have found out what areas we can reach in the world. So we now know from all these countries, or from the people that have given us feedback, what countries reach our messages if we're offering our helps. We also have a sort of a sample, a cross-section of real-world problems, tangible problems. So each problem or each document described is very specific. We also have a lot of examples of unsuccessful sourcing. So these are all documents that within the last years or even decades, organizations have been trying to source. Journalists have tried to source. In the example of Guantanamo, these manuals that we published, the ACLU had been trying to get these manuals for many, many years. And when we published the Guantanamo manuals a few weeks later, the ACLU actually, after years, received their copy under the Freedom of Information Act, and it was redacted. So they did not even get the full copy, and it was only a reaction to the fact that we had published the full thing that they did get anything at all. So it's a lot of organizations out there, people out there fighting for a good cause, that know that there is a certain specific document that they need, but they don't know how to get their hands on it. And this is what we're trying to assist. So in many cases, after years of desperate searches. Also, these are guidelines, as Julian said, these are guidelines for anyone who wants to know what information actually would be useful. So anyone that has access to information for whatever reason, that is an insider working in a corporation or a government, can look at this list and maybe will find a document that he or she can source and maybe out of a moral calling submit to Wikileaks. The list is, this is a screenshot on the left-hand side from the index of the list. So in total, we have 33 countries in the list that have contributed their documents. I know it's not really readable very well, but if you go to the wiki, you can see that. The top country with most submissions was the United States. I assume it is because we have a lot of readers in the United States and we're very popular, and as with anything else that we do in the project, the more people know about what we're doing, the more people actually also would involve and deliver this information or put themselves on that list. So, but just to have that mentioned. The term censorship was mentioned in 11 descriptions, so we can see that this is one of the stronger topics. 11 documents are also finance related, so there's a lot of people that are interested in specific financial details of transactions or whatever dealings within corporations or governments. 12 of them are contract related, so they are in many cases related to contracts for the United States military, for example, or also related to a lot of countries where foreign countries drill for oil, for example, or other countries where there's situations where water is being privatized in South America and people want to know what specific contracts have been made between them and the government. These are a few examples. So we have examples from open government and corporate transparency issues. One of the files that was requested for Germany is our current Chancellor's Stasi files, which I guess everybody would really like to see. In Bahrain, there are some demography issues, for example. So there are no known numbers of how many foreign people are let into the country. So the Bahrainian citizens are interested in this. We have requests about human rights abuse and torture. So especially for Guatemala, we have a lot of examples where the CIA has been very active in the 80s, and people would like to see certain documents on plans that the Americans have pursued in Guatemala. We have development and environmental issues. So there's oil exploitation contracts in Madagascar. We have the Isuzu Challenge in Mexico, which according to some sources is a cover-up for something like eco-piracy, where people drive into some eco-protected area and start pirating the nature. From Rwanda, we have there are documents on government payments made to a military person where people would like to know what this was about. Others are about citizen and media freedom. So we have internet surveillance in Colombia. We have a lot of Stasi background from Germany, as well as various citizen freedom files. Then there's Puerto Rico with FBI surveillance. So it's a mixed bag of all sorts of areas that we can cover with this list. And then, as Julian pointed out, there's the big issue of censorship that we have right now. So documents have been requested for China, the UK, Germany, Australia, and Italy. So as one follow-up, because we don't have the time to talk about this list in specific and to talk about the censorship issue, we will have a podium discussion about censorship, which is going to happen on Saturday. So on Saturday, when everything's over, it's on Friday. This is still the wrong slide. It's on Friday, so tomorrow at 11 o'clock, 11 p.m., so after the last talk in track 2 in the tent over there, we'll be having a podium discussion. We're still collecting a few people that we think are important to represent experts or specialists in that field, and we would like to openly discuss with anyone in the audience what we can do to counter this problem that we're all facing in Germany or throughout Europe, throughout the world. It's not specifically restricted to internet censorship, but I think this is what it boils down to for most information media. We believe that we all need one strong voice globally against censorship, and we also believe that each one of you has a responsibility to become part of this global voice. So whoever feels that his freedom of speech and freedom of expression are an important topic should please join us for this talk in the other track. Tonight at 2300, so the same time as tomorrow, we will here have a follow-up on the most wanted leaks. So anyone out there who really feels that he has talent, that he is smart, and that he can take up a challenge, we would like to offer you some perspective of how you can successfully help, tangibly help, bettering our world, involving in our project, and maybe help spreading some of the truth that we all are seeking for. So whoever is free tonight, not too drunk by 11 o'clock, is welcome to come around. And I hope that we can then maybe talk about some of the most wanted leaks, how to successfully source documents, where actually these documents can be found, who can be approached, what kind of people can help with these things. So, and this is going to happen here. So tomorrow 11 o'clock, today 11 o'clock here, and tomorrow in the other track. So realize your potential. Join us at 2300, and I guess now we're also running short of time. We'd like to offer you some possibilities for question as well. We'd like to thank, in the end, all of our courageous sources that have contributed to making Wikileaks a success in the last years. All the investigative journalists that care about the stories and the material that cooperated with us. All the organizations supporting freedom of speech, open media, and truth and justice all over the world. I see 4 people sitting here. They are a perfect example of ones that are riding in the front of this crowd. And all those that will maybe take a decision today to join us at 2300 to use their potential for making the world a little bit better. In that respect, finally, thanks for your attention. Have a great HAR. We also have T-shirts for this year and some other merchandise. Before I forget that, we have a village in the E area. We have around 250 T-shirts. Whoever would want one is perfectly welcome to drop by, and we can sell them off. And I guess, sorry? I don't understand you. Yes, and donations for sure are also welcome, but I guess that goes by for itself. So whoever would want to talk to us about that topic is also welcome to join us for a debate. So Thanks a lot in that respect. We get the 10-minute sign. We now have a couple of minutes for questions. So thanks a lot, and if there are any questions, please let us know. Okay, anyone?
Just wait a minute.
There's
Anyone
one question
questions?
over there. Okay.
How do you verify your sources?
Well, I guess we don't verify sources, we verify documents. That's what I would say. Sources are anonymous, so it's pretty hard to verify the source if you don't know the source in the first place.
Well, then how do you verify the documents?
So, you wanna...
Yeah, so this is actually pretty easy if you're not lazy. A document purports to be written by some organization or some person. So one of the easiest ways is you just call them up and ask. Not so hard. And the answer is yes, no, or I won't tell you. And if it's no, you have to do a bit more work. I don't think it's ever been no, actually.
No, I don't think so.
It's never been no. Because they don't know where you got it from. So there might be someone else in the organization who will just come out straight after that no and say yes. And that looks really, really bad. Yes is often done with a little bit of spin control. So big organizations know that the way to get positive stories is to talk to journalists. Because if you don't talk to journalists, the journalist goes, that bastard wouldn't even talk to me, right? So the media liaison units know that, and they do like to talk. Others, as an example, we released a classified document on Fallujah. Several actually, one on the prison, and that reformed all of the prisons in Western Iraq. Another on the attack in Fallujah. UPI, a friend of mine at UPI, Sean Waters, his national security correspondent, he then approached the US military, his contact, and said, what about this document? And he's like, I'm sorry, Sean, I can't help you with anything about that. I can't talk about that. But it's not a no. And then you just go through the facts of the document. Hey, well, you can't tell me that this document exists, but did this happen, and did this happen, and did this happen, and did this happen? Okay, so what you're saying is that everything in the document happened, but you're not telling me whether the document is true. And then from that point, you just use your experience and your journalistic gut and say, well, it's true. It's just obvious it's true. The amount of conspiracy or economic costs that would be necessary to not have that would be fanciful.
Question. Do you try to anonymize documents to get rid of digital watermarking techniques that might serialize the documents?
Yeah, so good question. Yes, we do. So it depends a little bit on the type of document we get. So everything, unless it's just something that's been censored, so we know that, it's a public document, it was censored, there's no issue as to the source, we reformat the document. Now, depending on the potential threat to the source and how likely it is someone's going to investigate. Top secret documents a big deal to if it's something from a bank compared to something from a university. We will then either completely reformat the document by dumping, say, from Word to PDF to PostScript and then back. Or we will partially do this just to strip out the metadata and any possible encoded metadata. The reason that you don't want to go all the way all the time is because if someone is consciously trying to detect if a source is leaking, it's very easy. So they can just put some spaces in the document or change one or two words. So there's no point in trying to prevent manual, conscious attempts at trying to discover which source is leaking. But people making mistakes is a very big one. And then any sort of automatic watermarking or time stamping is something also to deal with.
Well, in Holland, we can do WOP-verzoek. requesting public information from a government-related.
Can you repeat the question? Because I can't understand.
Yes. Well, we have in Holland, the government has to give information about public-related subjects, like the pollution of our air or the pollution of our drinking waters. And well, when we send a letter to the government, to the From Inspectie, the From Inspectie in the Netherlands, when the details get very hairy, they say, well, the document you're requesting no longer falls under the law of sending public information, and the document is now in the hands of a small company which we are hiring. So then the information is blocking, and in that way you can't continue in your research.
Sorry.
How are you going to solve that problem?
How am I going to solve this problem?
It's on.
So can I ask, is there anyone who understood that question? Yes. Can someone repeat it?
Probe.
This is working.
About the equivalent of the Freedom of Information Act request, where the government blocks releasing the information not because they don't have it necessarily, but rather because the corporation they've outsourced to has the document and is no longer beholden to the law because the law is somehow separate from this corporation.
Yeah, a good question, and a big problem, especially in the UK, where there are over 1,000 Quangos. This is quasi-governmental organisations. So we have released, in fact, a number of leaks from these Quangos that are set up outside government, but are funded by government, perform the work of government, but don't have the accountability of government. They don't have Freedom of Information Acts, etc. Those Quangos are a big issue in the UK at the moment. I'm not sure whether there will be a reform of them, because it's very easy to make an organisation take less government funding, pull it away to the point where you can say it really is a separate entity. So there's a blurry line there. And yeah, the only way to get it out is by leaking. Also, the Freedom of Information Act, which is, I think, possibly the best tool for democratic governments that has been invented, when it's followed, is not followed, and it's delayed extensively. Though you can have victories. Just a few months ago, there was a Guardian article as a result of a Freedom of Information request that we put in on the UK Defence Department. So as part of our proactive attempts to see if there are investigations of sources in defence departments and elsewhere, we FOI them to try and find any internal investigation that may have happened or may be happening. In the case of the UK Ministry of Defence, we had found that they had noticed particular classified UK documents on Wikileaks and had started up an internal investigation, hadn't been able to find the source, and then decided that the solution was to tell British Telecom to block all connections coming out of the Department of Defence to our main Swedish IPs. But we still get plenty of UK Ministry of Defence documents, so apparently not too effective.
Have you ever found two identical or seemingly identical documents that were leaked to you that had some sort of word differences that were perhaps steganographic encodings of the person that had the document, so that maybe they'd gone to something more active in terms of watermarking instead of just like MS Word document watermarking or something? Like where the text had been changed and you'd notice the difference between two of the same documents?
One word had been modified.
One word difference.
Yeah, sometimes.
No, we haven't. But by the way, if you are a source and you suspect that someone's doing this white space trick or changing one or two words, your best defense is to get another document from a colleague and compare to a hash, see if they're different. And if they are different, use your colleagues. But actually, we have received multiple versions of documents, and that can be very interesting, like in that Guantanamo case, or a draft document versus the public representation, or something that was classified and then declassified, and you see what stuff is removed. In the case of It's complicated, but an American military device that was used in Iraq. We had two descriptions of tests on this device that were very, very slightly different, and it revealed that they had concealed things about faults in this device. So comparisons are great, and by the way, side-by-side diff is really great. We did this for Guantanamo, and that revealed in very fine detail all the little changes, including some quite pathological changes. So, for example, removing all the words attempted suicide and replacing that with self-harm. So a big difference in the response, because the doctors on board have to do certain things when there's an attempted suicide they don't have to do self-harm.
Time's out.
Time's out?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
Time's out. What's the next presentation?
Actually, good question. I haven't had a look at the schedule at all yet. There's Mr. Nielsen, if I remember your name correctly, at least.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for
your
attention.